is the home of sim racing leagues. Our management tools allow you to recruit drivers and monitor their ratings and live splits. Find this and more at gridfinder.com. Sign up for free today.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series. We're getting on in the season time, definitely flying when we're having fun. We're here for the penultimate round, round number 5 of 6 here at Brands Hatch. But we don't take to the full Grand Prix loop, we go to the Indy circuit. Myself, Zach Sweeney, Chris Buxton alongside me in the commentary booth, with Mike Yao behind the scenes, pushing the buttons and making sure all the cameras are pointed at all the little bits of action that we're going to see throughout today, with a very hotly contested championship at stake. Chris, it should be a very fun one.
Isn't it just? The top 4 drivers in particular, less than 10 points apart. Jamie Peters-Ennis following a strong showing in Anglesey and in Snetterton, getting his way to the top by a solitary point over championship favourite Tom O'Farrell.
There you can see, of course, the points as they are. 189 to Peters-Ennis, who's off the bounce of 2 wins. Tom O'Farrell struggling a little bit for pace at Snetterton, but overall managed to bag a decent result, limit the damage, and limit the point gap to just 1 point. Bobby Simmons, a consistent run for him as well, 182 points, ahead of Nathan Maximan, just outside that all-important top 3 to win yourself an ARDS license test on 181. Van Abbott rounding off the top 5, however, unfortunately, won't be joining us today due to the Abbott household catching a case of the flu. So they're bedridden and unfortunately at home. There is the grid, though. And the top 4 in the championship, locking out the top 2 rows in qualifying. O'Farrell from Maximan, Peters-Ennis and Bobby Simmons. And Greg Giles, who rounds off the top 5. Ash Hill with a fantastic qualifying at rounding off row 3. The Jack Mason, Nick Creed, 7th and 8th. David Evans and Ollie Ricks round off the top 10 ahead of Colin Dunn and Andy Greer-Hardy that keep each other company on row 6. Richard Pixley and Scott Pucknell, 13th and 14th ahead of Wardle and Copeland on row 8. Mark Hancock and William Hartley round off row 9 ahead of Cornelius and Thorne on row 10. Abrizazi and Preble round off the 22 car field that we've got in store for us today. And of course, with it being such a short circuit, Chris, it should be an action-packed race all the way through.
Even in these mighty little Ford KAs, Brands Hatch Indy, it never ever fails to produce some incredible action. It's a place I've been to several times and always enjoy my time there. Such a great circuit. Biased, yes. I'll take that accusation, but it's such a great track and it's so well suited to these little Ford KAs.
They very much are. And again, it's been a fantastic season. Of course, we've travelled to some brilliant circuits. Of course, the final round in a week's time has been voted by you guys at home. We'll announce that a little bit later on. We'll keep you on your toes for a little bit longer. But what we do get to enjoy is Brands Hatch Indy. Again, the shorter layout, only just over a minute in lap time, and hopefully plenty of overtaking opportunities between now and the end. What we're thinking about strategy, though, because of course it's not going to be as wearing on the tyres, but still definitely an element to consider.
That's true enough, but I mean, these guys know Brands Hatch. This is a circuit these guys know so intimately. They almost know how many blades of grass there are on the out and in field. They know exactly what they're capable of. They know exactly what their setups are capable of. So I'm actually expecting just everybody to go absolutely hell for leather. I don't think we're going to see anybody holding back. Exactly as you say, Zach, the tyres aren't quite so punished here. The corners are fairly slow for the most part. But yeah, Paddock Hill Bend has always been somewhat of my nemesis in sim racing terms. I have buried many a virtual car in the gravel trap and grass areas on the outside and inside of that particular area. So challenge nonetheless.
Have done a couple of people, but we're about to get ourselves underway. There you can see the 6 red lights are on and we're underway for round number 5 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series. Tom O'Farrell defending going into Paddock Hill Bend, as you can see, the 2 behind as well. A very tentative start, of course. These EnduroKAs only got 69 brake horsepower. Bobby Simmons trying to fight away with, of course, Peters-Ennis, who's there in 4th place. O'Farrell and Maximan lead the way. However, side by side on that uphill climb towards Druids, Peters-Ennis trying to make the move and get himself onto the podium, but unable to find the way through just yet. Mace, Creed and Hill all battling away. A poor start, it must be said, for Ash Hill. Nick Creed, of course, on the inside of Mace as they run their way through Druids, but so far a fairly tame start, particularly at the front.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was either a jump start from Nathan Maximin or a really poor start from Tom O'Farrell, because Nathan absolutely flew off the line, but still couldn't quite get his car into the lead by the time they came into Paddock Hill Bend. But look how nailed to each other they are. As we can see, Jamie Peters actually losing as well. Well, having to defend that third place against Giles, now coming through the outside line. Peters has suddenly lost that momentum here. I think he's been very, very cautious in these opening laps, and that's going to really, really be painful. We don't have exactly as you say, Zach. We don't have many rounds left of the season. He can't afford to lose time against his championship rivals. He only needs by a single championship point. And look how close Tom O'Farrell and Nathan Maximin were. Less than 10 separate the two as they cross the line. There's still less than 10. There's not even a bumper width between the two as they come into Druids once more.
Yeah, O'Farrell really late on the brakes, but you can see Nathan Maximan fighting for his place inside the top three, not yet qualified as an ARDS licensed driver. So that top three, that free ARDS license test prize at the end of the season, all more important to him. He's fighting, of course, hammer and tongue for it. You can see a very good review of Tom O'Farrell's Ford KA. Now looking to the outside as they run their way through Surtees and in towards the final corner here at Clark. It's a very crucial corner, probably a decent overtaking opportunity, but very easy to defend. A big snap of oversteer as well as he runs his way through, but it's all about momentum, and Nathan Maximan putting in a ton of pressure, however, into the pit lane, so potentially a drive-through penalty for, of course, that jump start.
Yeah, I thought that might have been the case. It looked a bit too good, and he's going to have to pay the price for that one. What a shame for Nathan Maximin. He was only 8 points off the championship lead when they came into this round, and that is such a colossal amount of time. Oh, I thought I was Peter Zennis for a minute coming to the pit lane as well. But no, not quite similar. Oh, no impact between the two. That's a problem with the characteristic of the pit lane entry here at Brands Hatch. You do kind of filter onto the racing line. It is very easy to tangle up with one another, but there was no harm or no foul on this occasion.
Yeah, everyone able to get through quite nicely. Did see, of course, a video from David Edwards of his particular incursion at Paddock Hill Bend. Very easily done, and hopefully one that's not going to be replicated again here today. Still 57 minutes on the clock and plenty of laps left to go. But with Maximan's drive-through penalty, it has allowed Tom O'Farrell to bridge quite a big gap, 1.1 seconds now ahead of Bobby Simmons, which at such a short track like Brands Indy, there's not as many opportunities to gain time, which means that 1.2 second gap is a huge advantage to have this early on.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom O'Farrell will be really smiling in the helmet of the number 97 car at the moment. So, you know, champion Bobby Simmons, who is chasing him down as far as on-track position is concerned, is the champion from last season, remember. So those two have, of course, been locked in that top battle for most of the season, with Jamie Peters picking up points where Tom and Bobby have pretty much fallen foul. So also bearing in mind, Bobby hasn't actually won a race this season. He's been a regular podium scorer and he's still within 10 points of the top spot without scoring a win as yet. So consistency proving king for him, absolutely so. But exactly as you say, Zach, you do not want to be giving anyone any kind of opportunity to build up of over a second. You do not want to give Tom O'Farrell that kind of rope. He will run off into the distance. But in fairness, Bobby Simmons has not been able to shake off Greg Giles as they're now coming to complete another lap. There will be many of them, even in these cars.
Yeah, as we say, pole time just over a 1:01, so about 1:01.9 exactly. You can see now race lap times just about 1:02.8, I think, coming in for a couple of people. So again, not the quickest lap times, best lap at 1:02.4, of course, for our race leader Tom O'Farrell. Very dicey moment here. Nathan Maximan, of course, trying to fight his way back through the field after that disastrous penalty. Such a small mistake, unfortunately, with huge consequences. Just in behind, of course, you've got Hartley fighting away with him, of course, as Maximan tries to pick his way in through the carnage. Of course, a bit of lap traffic, I believe, to contend with as well, which is always going to be a bit of an upset. But Maximan holding firm in 14th place, but still a long way to go if he wants to limit the damage versus his championship rivals.
Oh, did you see Griardi? Oh no, I was about to say Griardi nearly lost his nose there, but that is William Hartley that's just been turned on the exit of Graham Hill Bend. Even though these are front-wheel drive cars, it's so easy to just push, well, to have that tail end pushed around, and that is exactly what's happened here. This is a challenge for second place. Greg Giles lost about 6/10-ish against Bobby Simmons, but on maintaining that great momentum from Clark Curve, and that has given Greg Giles second place from the champion at the moment. Oh, as Bobby Simmons flirts with the gravel on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend. A change for second. Can Greg Giles trace off after Talmo Farrell? Well, he's certainly got he's got the bit between his teeth. He's had 2 third-place podium finishes thus far in the season. Still sees him as 7th. He's out of reach, realistically speaking. Not mathematically, but realistically speaking, of that top spot. But he's giving it all he's got nonetheless.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Greg Giles, he's been a sensational qualifier. He's the driver that over the course of the first 3 rounds was inside... Oh, no, the first 2 rounds was inside the top 3. Oh, no, it was the top 3 rounds. First 3 rounds was inside the top 3 in every qualifying session. And since, I don't think he's been outside of the top 6. Of course, his race pace... not the best, of course, particularly at the start of the season. It has improved as the season has gone on, and today would be a huge statement of intent, a staple race for him if he's able to secure a 2nd place, because the pace is there, and in fact, on that previous lap, despite the overtake, even quicker than O'Farrell by about a couple of tenths of a second. So could we see Greg Giles going for the win?
It's certainly possible. He's really determined. He's already built up a second between himself and Bobby Simmons. Lots of fighting further back. That's what we love to see, isn't it? As we now see Andy Greer-Hardy. Plenty of slidey ways coming into Paddock Hill Bend. It's very easy to lose any car. Front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, well, especially if it's rear-wheel drive. Coming over Paddock Hill Bend, the car gets so light, and it is an absolute stomach-churning drop you experience down from Pilgrim's Bend and then up through Pilgrim's Rise. It is really, really drastic. You don't appreciate quite how much of an altitude change it is until you're there, or until you've driven something around it and you've left your lunch behind. Either way, Paddock Hill Bend is such a challenging corner to get right. Very easy to get wrong, and in these cars, you can't afford to lose, even minute amounts of time. But Tom O'Farrell, seeing he's got the challenge, has now got his foot down once again, slightly opened up that gap. 1.5 seconds to the good.
Yeah, not really much to play with, though. Of course, on raw pace, that's a huge gap, but that's one mistake. As we said, it's so easy to get things really wrong here at Brands Indy. Of course, it's not the most technical circuit by any means, but looking at the track at face value does not tell you the whole story. The undulation changes, the difficulties in terms of the lack of runoff, the character of this circuit really builds itself into a true test of a driver's skill. And of course, whilst O'Farrell is probably one of the best advocates of driver skill in this field, doesn't necessarily mean he's immune to mistakes. We've seen that before this season. He's not immune to mistakes, and as I say, while on pace it's going to be difficult to close, one spin and Greg Giles is back into the slipstream.
Yeah, absolutely. So, or you're caught up in someone else's incident. I mean, how many times have we seen that in this series or in any kind of motor racing event? It doesn't have to be your own mistake you're caught up in to completely change the face of a race. There we go. The next lap time's coming out, and Tom O'Farrell again just another 10th quicker as he's starting to eke out that gap once again. External shot of Colin Dunn then trying to wrestle that 14th position from Andy Greer-Hardy. So Colin getting a good run from Clark Curve. Now down the Brabham Straight, he's got the inside line for Paddock Hill Bend. Not always the fastest way of doing it. You can maintain the momentum. I think Andy Greer-Hardy kind of conceded that one. He could have tried to challenge, but you do run the risk of being shoved rather unceremoniously off into the dust. But here comes Andy again. He wants to make the counter attack on the inside line of Druids. Does Colin see him? Oh, a little bit of a touch there. No harm, no foul. Colin nicely on the gas there. Boosts the throttle to get the tail to behave itself. And that's 14th place to Colin Dunn.
Yeah, nicely done, of course, from Colin Dunn. No pun intended, actually.
You had to do it, didn't you, Zach?
No, honestly, that was completely unintentional.
It's actually very difficult to avoid that one.
But yeah, Colin Dunn getting the work done, I suppose. Anyway, into 14th place. This probably won't be the last time we've said it. It's probably not the first time we've said it this season either. Probably the only time we've actually been conscious of it. 10 minutes into this race already, and Colin up 4 places from where he started, of course, in 18th place. So proving this track fairly raceable, but it runs the risk, of course, the more you battle, the bigger field spread that we're going to get over the course of the race. And with how difficult it can be to close the gaps, of course, it's probably going to stay that way. Greer-Hardy immediately launching a bit of a counter-attack into Paddock Hill Bend, but Colin Dunn able to stay ahead. Good progress, but it's going to be difficult the further the race goes in.
Absolutely. So I'm a little surprised, actually, that the top 5 have spread out to the degree they have, but we are enjoying the racing nonetheless. Whilst Colin Dunn has managed to get that 14th position, Andy Greer-Hardy has no respite whatsoever. He has now got Hancock all over his tail, and then you've got Nathan Maximin. It is only a few tenths behind them as well. So they come together, then you've got Nathan ready to get stuck in and challenge for what is now that 15th position. I must admit, I'm still not sold on the blue and pink livery that some of our drivers are sporting. I'm looking at you, Mr. Dung and Mr. Peters Ennis. But either way, we do seem to have a bit of a charge, though, up top with Greg Giles. He's under a second now from Tom O'Farrell. We may well be seeing a challenge for the lead before too long, as we now look at another great battle here. Greg Copeland, Ollie Ricks and Wardle all arguing for a spot inside the top 10.
Yeah, and of course, points on offer all the way down to P25, but, get inside the top 10, good little milestone to sort of aim for as such, particularly for some of the midfield drivers. So Copeland trying to keep Ollie Ricks at bay at the moment, though. He's doing a pretty good job of that. The 95 machine, though, eyeing him up, waiting for a golden opportunity to find their way past. At the moment, this is their ceiling as such, 4.8 up to Preble in 9th. Keeping an eye on that lead battle as well. Now 0.6 of a second between O'Farrell and Giles. Here comes Ollie Ricks to the outside of Clark Curve, really trying to set up the up and under because momentum's such a big thing. Look at the closing speed that he's got. Can he keep the grip level as they exit to start the next lap? Of course, pit window is now open for the next 40 minutes. Neither of them, though, decided to come in thus far. Now to the outside, Ollie Ricks in towards Paddock Hill Bend.
Yeah, that camera angle does slightly exaggerate the momentum when they land the outside line. However, side by side, oh no, Ollie Ricks flirting too much with the grass on the outside line on the entrance of Paddock Hill Bend. That could have gone horribly, horribly wrong. Fortunately for him, he did manage to find some AstroTurf, so a bit more terra firma to get the grip biting back to his Ford KA right behind him. You've got Wardle, and now on the left-hand side, it is the battle for the lead. Oh, hold on a minute. Now, the tower is saying that lead has changed. Where's Tom gone?
Well, at the moment, it says down into second place. But what has happened?
Oh, no, there he is.
No, he's fine. It's fine. It's a momentary lapse, I think, in the tower, but it's close.
That's not the problem.
Definitely so. Ollie Ricks on the inside here, fighting with Wardle, who's now onto the back of this battle with Copeland. But yeah, that fight between O'Farrell and Giles, well, it hasn't changed yet. The big focus word there, I suppose, is yet, because it could well change in the near future. Ollie Ricks here trying to fight his way into the top 10, but sandwiched between Copeland and Wardle.
Yeah, Copeland is in a bit of an uncomfortable position there. He was forced to the outside line, but has managed to maintain the position. Ricks and Wardle side by side as they come into Paddock Hill Bend once more. Now, has Ollie Ricks realised he's there? Oh, and he actually manages to get that 10th position. Copeland's run too deep, and now Sympathy Wardle's gone through as well. Pucknell now is now taking full advantage of the fact that these guys have kind of completely sacrificed their momentum and jumps through up into 13th place.
Yeah, beautiful stuff, and again, just capitalising on sort of other people's mistakes as such, and making the most of opportunities if/when they come, because it can sometimes be difficult to overtake here. No difficulty between these two, though, as Wardle fights away with Copeland. You can see now trying to fight his way on the inside as they run their way in towards Clark Curve. 3 wide momentarily. Copeland, of course, all the way on the right. There's a bit of contact, as I believe one of them was sent wide, but they, of course, start the next lap, and Copeland up into 12th.
Oh, that got a little bit uncomfortable. Three wide. I mean, the track is just about wide enough to go 3 wide in these small cars, but you never ever want to do it. But they have managed to survive another day. Look at Ollie Ricks. He's fully capitalising on the fact that these 3 are battling very, very hard as well. So Copeland trying to maintain his momentum. He's gone too deep. And that gravel track is so unforgiving. It will just sap away your momentum, and then these light powered cars really then struggle that bit more to get back up Pilgrim's Rise into Druids. And look at how much time that's cost Greg Copeland. 2 seconds now he has lost, as that is Wardle and Ricks ahead of him. And a bigger one is Pucknell that's ahead of him. That the tower will update itself in a minute. So yeah, Glenn Copeland losing out quite badly there.
Yeah, easily done. And again, the momentum swings one way, then very drastically swings the other. And at Brands Indy, more so than almost anywhere, really. Well, to be fair, most of the circuits we've been to, very momentum orientated. I think it's more the car than anything, but coupled with Brands Indy, of course, it's so important to keep that minimum speed up. So many flowing corners that really sort of rhythmically run into each other. Yeah, one sort of tarnish in momentum can take you quite a while to sort of build it back up. By that point, you've very easily lost, half a second, second and a half sometimes, a little bit further up, I think. A bit of overlap in terms of those on the lead lap and those not. There's Pucknell, of course, fighting away for 12th. Nathan Maxman as well. A couple of changes up and down the timing order, but the top two still only separated by half a second. Here's Copeland fighting with Colin Dunn, who is now back through, and these guys from Pucknell, Maxman, Dunn, and Copeland, all between them less than a second.
I always know when I'm in trouble when I either get referred to by my surname alone, or if I'm in big trouble, I get the full version of my first name come out. That's when I know I'm in real deep trouble. The reasoning for the two-tone livery on Colin's car, it's I believe it was Colin's car. Half of it is the Positive Perception Esports livery, who've done a fantastic job in bringing these liveries alive all season long, and the other is the Wild Things Racing squad, which is owned by the great Denise Pope. There we go. You can actually see it in the shot there. The pink and sky blue livery, as we continue to look at Nathan Maximin fending off the advances of, oh, that looks very deep, flirting with the again. Well, I keep saying you flirt with the gravel trap on the outside. You have to. That's the thing. You have to maintain every bit of momentum you can in these lightly powered cars. So then it's very easy to go wrong. Here's the lead battle once more. Greg Giles just about in touching range of a bit of slipstream from Tom O'Farrell. I always say it's about 0.8 of a second you need to start to feel any kind of effects of it. You'll start to feel a little bit, but Tom O'Farrell, again, he's just finding that 10th here and there to keep Greg Giles at bay. Oh, I thought that was a spin there, but no, that was a backwards camera we were looking at on Richard Pixley, as he is now battling side by side. There's another one of those two-tone liveries there. So again, he's a lap down, but he's still hanging on in there.
He is, and trooping along, which is good. The determination is there. Just wanting to get to the end more than anything. Unfortunately, not having the best of starts in P20, but he's he signed up for the season. He's arrived, and he wants to spend his Saturday evening doing something productive, and he's out there on circuit. Still loads of things sort of to be learned, even if the race itself isn't going too well. His pace definitely matching those that are on the lead lap, so potential was there for Richard Pixley. Unfortunately, just hasn't been able to capitalise on it. Less than a quarter of a second between O'Farrell and Greg Giles, though. Could we be turning up the heat in terms of that lead fight? A 10th as it's closing and closing. I think Greg Giles is not a million miles away from launching a bit of a move. It's going to go sub 1/10. You can see they're 0.7 of a second quicker on that lap alone. Greg Giles really getting up onto the back of O'Farrell and potentially going for the lead.
Well, that was a storming lap from Greg Giles there. Not his best. You can see when the lap time is displayed on the tower, when it goes purple, that's a personal best for that driver. It may well be the race best as well, but when you'll see lots of purple times come up, particularly in the early stages of the race, that's a personal best for that driver. So being that's 102.1 wasn't purple, means Greg has done better than that in the course of the lap, but he's now very much glued to the back of Tom O'Farrell. That challenge for the lead very, very much alive, and Tom will know it, despite the fact that Greg Giles may not necessarily be his closest rival as far as the championship is concerned. Let's face it, they're racing drivers. They are going to battle anybody that is on their tail.
They are, and looking at the timing tower, you can see Greg Giles moving past Tom O'Farrell into, of course, the end of the first third of this race. Still half an hour left to go in terms of the pit window, so maybe strategy can reel O'Farrell back into it, and you can bet your bottom dollar that is not at the end of this particular battle for the lead. But Greg Giles, on merit, leading a race, and he's earned it, to be fair. It's not by circumstance or by luck or by a first lap crash. He has gotten into that lead. He's closed a 1.3 second margin to get there, and he's fought his way past a huge championship contender in order to do so. Let's see, though, how that gap is going to change now he's in front. Is it going to grow, or is O'Farrell going to stay all tucked up behind him?
Well, at the moment, it looks like it's growing in the favour of Giles, but we'll see. They are catching back markers. You can see, you just saw somebody just disappear out of the shot there, so that is another thing that our drivers will have to contend with. The back markers will, of course, try and stay out of the way, but with there being such a marginal pace difference top to bottom, it's not always easy to do that. But Tom O'Farrell, all of these drivers know how to play this game. They know how to sit in the tyre tracks of the car ahead of them. As we can see, just going through the shot there, Bobby Simmons and Jamie Peters-Ennis, they are a good 3 seconds back from this lead battle, not where they want to be. But Jamie Peters-Ennis, there you can see his lap time in purple, so that's a personal best for him. So he's now starting to push to chase after Bobby Simmons to at least get onto the podium.
Yeah, indeed so, and that's going to be good damage limitation versus O'Farrell. Of course, there's also 2 points for the fastest lap, which at the moment goes the way of Greg Giles. They start at 50 for a win and go down in 2-point increments down to P25. So if Peter Ennis is able to get ahead of Bobby Simmons, that's going to mean the championship is going to swing in the favour of O'Farrell, but only separated by 1 point. A very stray. I believe that might be someone losing a bit of time going into 30. He's not entirely sure as to who. O'Farrell just working his way past, but I think that hazard has been cleared. Jack Mason, Nick Creed fighting over 5th as well, very, very close. But for Peter Ennis, that is a very, very important bit of damage limitation going into that final round.
Interesting. You see Tom O'Farrell going straight to that inside line, not following the tyre tracks of Greg Giles. Slightly unusual effort there. He's not defending from anybody. He's more making Greg Giles aware that he is still there. I highly doubt Greg Giles has forgotten the fact that Tom is still there, but these are all the mind games that any drivers will play. They will always try and distract the driver ahead of them. Obviously not unduly, but they will try these tactics just to get into the psyche of their prey. We've seen there Mace and Creed. This is that fantastic battle for 5th position that is raging on for a while. Behind them you've got Evans and Hill. They're arguing for 7th place as well. So as we always enjoy here in the EnduroKA, either trackside or in the sim racing variant, there's always arguments up and down the field. Colin Dunn still arguing with Bucknell, now for 13th position. So there's battles all over the place.
There is, and that's what we've been able to sort of boast all season long. Snetterton a week ago, or 2 weeks ago actually, sorry, was a prime example of how close it can be. The entire season as a whole, I mean, just look at the championship standings coming into today and the qualifying results. Very hotly contested. All of these drivers fighting to prove themselves. Of course, a lot of them do it in real life. A lot of them focus primarily on the sim. A lot of them do a bit of both, and they're all vying for the ultimate crown here of the Winter Sim Series. Nick Creed on the inside of Jack Mace as they run their way in towards Paddock Hill Bend. The inside, of course, very optimal, but if you can get the grip on the outside, you can keep that momentum up. The unfortunate thing is you've got to go all the way along the outside of Druids, but again, still doable if you're able to get the rotation, which is exactly what Mace has been able to do. Nick Creed, though, extending the margin on the outside. The downhill run, though, and your efforts are rewarded with the inside for Graham Hill Bend, which is, of course, the ideal line. Nick Creed having to settle back into 6th as Mace keeps 5th.
That hasn't really cost them any times of the battle behind them either, Evans and Hill. It has closed in a little, but not by a drastic amount. Whilst I was somewhat chastising the pink and blue, there are so many liveries I really, really love. The yellow and blue we can see on Mace's car in particular really does catch the eye. There's that lemon and lime one-eyed nickname back in Anglesey. Oh, side by side again, Nick Creed's that I've had enough of you talking about colours. I want to have a go at 5th place here against Jack Mace. Now, is he going to be able to get the momentum on the inside line of Paddock Hill Bend? Well, it's very much story retold from last lap, and he's absolutely got it this time. I think that was a bit of a surrender then from the number 3 car. Mace realizing that one is done. And you realistically know when a move is complete. There's no point trying to shut the door with the car in it. Jack Mace losing out on that 5th place to Nick Creed.
Yeah, it was a hard-fought battle, and one that obviously isn't over. Of course, the battle is won for Nick Creed, but the war definitely not over and won't be for another 36 minutes. Still only half a second separating our top 2. No one really making their mandatory pit stops as of yet. No, definitely not. I don't think anyone really has come into the pit lane, apart from those, obviously, with drive-throughs and such at the beginning. So that'll be interesting to see when that materialises, because if you're quicker on 1 lap pace but struggle to get past, you come in, you get some clear air, and you get that position sort of on aggregate as such. You know, on that time delta, you make it up, you get your way past, and sometimes that's the best and easiest way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're losing time, over and over, lap after lap after lap, there's no point just sitting there trying to force the mistake if you have a pit stop to serve. So you may as well get it done, get some clean air ahead of you, so you're not costing yourself time trying to second guess where your opponent's going, trying to force that mistake. And that undercut can be very, very important, particularly in these momentum-based cars. If you've got a power advantage, that's one thing. But when you've got these cars, all of course very, very lightly powered, you take any advantage where you can get it. We're cutting back now to the battle for the lead. Tom O'Farrell has got a bit of momentum gain on Greg Giles through Clark Curve. Now they're going to try and go side by side. Tom's a little bit far back at the moment to make that stick. He returns back to the tyre tracks of Greg Giles for now. And behind them is Bobby Simmons beginning to close them in. It was around about 3 seconds last time we checked in with him. It's still around 3.2. But Jamie Peters hasn't been able to close in on him at the moment. So if these two start to really scrap, they could well bring Enard, the championship leader and previous champion, into this battle.
Very much so. Yeah, 3 seconds is a fairly substantial gap, and Peters Ennis dropping off as well to Bobby Simmons. So that gap fairly substantial, especially at such a short circuit. But again, momentum. If things go wrong, if you spend too long side by side, you can very easily lose that 3 second gap in a matter of not necessarily a couple of corners, but definitely a couple of laps of sort of hard racing. And that's a trap these two have got to be very mindful of, and one that O'Farrell is going to be mindful of, because at the moment he is gaining points. He's taking the championship lead, and he is gaining points on Simmons, Creed, Maximan, of course both Abbotts as well, because obviously they're not here. He's in a good position. Of course, it could be great in the sense that he wins a race and gets his third of the season, but is it worth the risk to go for those extra 2 points when in reality you could very easily lose the points that you are gaining to those behind by reeling them back into the battle and then somehow actually ending up behind them? So it's something that O'Farrell is going to have to weigh up in his head.
Yeah, very true. And it's never a decision that is easy to make. You have to weigh up where your opponent is. You have to weigh up how much time you're realistically losing to the cars around you. As very nicely done. The highly pink and white striped car getting very much out of the way. Looks like we've got Copeland in to serve his mandatory stop. So out of that pack he was in around 13th or so, he has decided now is the optimum time. See, they've got plenty of time yet to serve their pit stop. Just under 23 minutes remaining, meaning it's just over a minute per lap. They of course have that many opportunities to get their pit stop done. Slightly further back, David Evans in this battle with Ash Hill and Greg Preble for 7th position. The three cars a little bit spread out now, but not far enough that they can just ignore each other. So Ash Hill, we saw qualifying well earlier on, in that 7th place at the moment. 6th in the championship for Ash. We'll see what he can do from here. He's been a real, every single round he's been inside the top 10. Again, consistency proving well for the lemon and lime flavoured car.
He's such a strong driver, and obviously really stood out to me at Donington, around number 2. His ability to just stand at the top of a particular battle and stay there for quite some time. I think it was a battle for, I think it was 6th or 7th. Of course, he finished 6th in the end. Essentially for Ash Hill, he was fighting for obviously relative to him, quite a substantial position as such, firmly inside the top 10 and looking for a strong result. And his defense was sensational, and of course his battling, he's been able to transfer that skill into attack and defense, and has boasted a really consistent season as well, firmly inside the top 10 in the standings as well. David Evans, though, into the pit lane, one of the first drivers to take their mandatory stop. And to be fair, around about this halfway point, so I think people are just going to take it 50-50.
I think most people probably will, unless they are engaged in the battle they feel they're losing time on, which we have already talked about. Which Bobby Simmons is not in. He's definitely given himself some breathing space from Jamie Peters Ennis, but still not gaining on the top 2. I think Tom and Greg at the moment, not so much working together, but they're not working against each other. They're not costing each other time. They're just going through the motions at the moment. But generally, after the pit stop's concluded, the gloves are off, and that's when they really will push until that checkered flag falls. We're still 5-ish minutes from halfway in this race, but still plenty of positions to conclude. Greg Giles from the race lead is now serving his pit stop now.
He is. Let's see what that's going to be relative to Tom O'Farrell, of course. The trivial things, like getting into the pit lane, of course, there is a mini chicane that is a corner, is opportunity to gain lap time, making sure you're slowed down enough for the pit speed limit line, stopping in your box, going again, disabling the pit limiter. Something that you really wouldn't give a second thought necessarily in practice, but I saw it literally a couple of weeks ago, that 3 people at Road America got drive-through penalties for activating or disabling the pit speed limiter too early as such. So the smallest trivial things inside a pit stop can actually be detrimental to your race. There's such a small gain for getting it really right, but such a big loss for getting it really wrong. And that's something that Greg Giles is going to have to be so mindful of, nailing his in-lap and out-lap. But the same is true for Tomo Farrell if he wants to be right in the mix again to launch a counter-attack for the lead.
And again, you've got to capitalize on every tiny bit of advantage you can. If you're able to drop your pit lane speed limiter a fraction of a second earlier, you will be able to gain that fraction of a tenth. Sounds trivial, but again, in these cars that are all momentum based, so light powered, you don't have a power deficit top to bottom. So you take those little advantages where you can. In comes another couple of cars. Creed and Preble are now into the pits to serve their pit stops. Now, Tom O'Farrell, he could choose to really push at this point and try and overcut the likes of everybody else, essentially. The longer he stays out, the longer he's got free air to try and get those lap times in that he is capable of. I mean, we will see, as you can see, how, because the lap is so short, when you do come in for your mandatory stop, you are pushed that far further down the field. Yeah, the likes of Snetterton, of course, being a much, much longer circuit, you don't lose, as far as track position is concerned, anywhere near the same length of time. It's nearly a double length, double the lap time length of what it is here in Brands Hatch. So again, there's another thing to bear in mind, is when you do serve your pit stop, you could well come out say you come out right into this battle here between Pugnall and Greer Hardy. They're having their own argument for 13th position. And nearly flirting with the grass there as Andy Greer Hardy gets a tiny bit too deep going through Graham Hill Bend. Now, the last thing you want to be doing is getting caught up in someone else's battle that you are potentially quicker than, but that's for on-track position. They're not going to just let you past. Well, they may decide to. They're not obliged to, is my point. So they may well decide to continue their own battle and completely disregard you, and that then costs you time against the people you were battling with before your pit stop takes place.
There are too many variables in motorsport, and it's not necessarily a bad thing from our perspective, because we get to enjoy each and every single one of them. We just have to try and stay on top of each and every single one of them, but nowhere near as mentally draining, I suppose, as actually having to deal with them at the forefront, like each and every single one of these drivers out there. But of course, something they're going to have to get used to, and something that the sim is really good at teaching you to do and apply those skills, of course, in real life, potentially, if they're able to get inside the top 3 and acquire their ARDS license test, of course, supplied by our fabulous sponsors at Burton Power. So for the second season running, the top 3 in the championship will get themselves an ARDS license, which I believe is going to set you back about 650 quid, and is a really good stepping stone into the real life club motorsport. So applying those skills both ways can be quite useful. And of course, maybe some of the EnduroKA drivers that started in the sim they'll use that as a stepping stone into a cheap-ish or a cheaper way into real life motorsport as well. And what fun they would have if they did. Yeah,
absolutely. So speaking of leaders getting caught up in battles, Greg Giles is exactly that. He's now stuck in that battle for 6th between himself, what is now himself, Wardle, and Nick Creed. And there we go, side by side. Greg Giles is really having to hustle harder than he probably would like to just get through what is to him traffic. Even though on track wise, that is for a legitimate position. But this is costing him crucial time against Tom O'Farrell. The only thing that really Greg Giles can hope for is that Tom gets caught up in a squabble when he comes through the pits, but there's still another 16 minutes to go before the pit window closes. Bobby Simmons, our champion, is in. He's choosing now to serve his pit stop. It's actually very easy, despite the fact that you do have quite a generous window, and like I said, because the lap time is so short, you have that many opportunities to serve your pit stop. It's actually surprisingly easy to forget about it entirely, especially when you're in such an intense battle as the 3 and nearly 4-way fight that we are actually looking at right now. You're so absorbed in the cars around you, you completely forget about the fact that you've got a very limited period of time to get your car in to serve its stop.
Yeah, indeed so. Especially when you don't necessarily need to change tyres or refuel as such, like might not be the case here with such a low amount of degradation. It's almost a case of you're not necessarily reminded that you need to pit either. It's not like, oh, the tyres are going off, I better pit, or oh, I'm getting low on fuel, I better pit. As such, because that could be quite a long time into the race before you actually realise that of course you need to do it. But something that will be there. It's something that I'm sure O'Farrell won't forget. But while he has been out, his pace has been staggering. His last lap, a 1:04.4 for Greg Giles. In fact, actually, was quite significantly quicker, a 1:03.1, which is quicker despite the fact that he is locked in this battle with Wardle. So O'Farrell out in front, of course, benefiting from some clear air, might not get the advantage that we'd have once expected. Giles, using the slipstream, of course, of this pack that he was now in, now is at the top of it. Greer Hardy into the pit lane, as was Bobby Simmons not too long ago. So O'Farrell and Peters Ennis lead the way in this race. Giles now clear in some free air. Let's see what the pace is like between the two of them.
That's definitely cost Greg Giles time. Nick Creed was attacking Greg a few times, coming through Druids for the last few laps, which he's perfectly entitled to do. So Greg Giles won't have liked that. His argument would be, well, this isn't my fight. You're not realistically fighting me. I want to be up with the leaders. But then the counter argument to that is, you're in a position I can overtake for. I am perfectly entitled to go for it. Therefore, I'm going to. So yeah, two different arguments to that, or two different sides to that particular argument, as we are now looking at Nathan Maximin once more on the back of Ollie Ricks. These two locked in their battle for 11th position. These two have been quite close to each other on the track for most of the race. Noticing Tom is going quite some distance here, so whether he realizes that Greg has been caught up in the battle and he's pushing as much as he can to maximize his advantage, I mean, only really he knows that. But now that Greg Giles is free of challenge, he's got 9 seconds before he closes in on Bobby Simmons. And bearing in mind that Bobby Simmons was behind Greg Giles before the pit stops, that's how costly that's been. Now, I suspect there's been a mistake along the way somewhere as well, because he didn't look like he lost 9 seconds as opposed to, being involved in that particular battle that he was in. So I suspect there's been a mistake somewhere, but even still, that's how costly it's been. Tom and Jamie both in, the top two, choosing to serve their pit stop now.
Yeah, into the pit lane they come. Let's see which of the two, or obviously where they're going to come out in their respective battles. Jack Mace stays out another lap, takes the lead of this race, but where is O'Farrell relative to Giles? Where is Peters Ennis relative to Bobby Simmons? There he is, leaving the pit lane. Of course, there is Bobby Simmons. So Simmons, losing quite a significant amount of time, actually. I think it was Peters Ennis closing on Simmons originally. So the undercut really working there for the pink and blue. There's Maximan now up into 11th place, making some steady progress forward. O'Farrell, though, leaving the pit lane 6.9 seconds clear of Greg Giles. Surely that's not correct?
So that's what the tyre is telling us. I mean, he does seem somewhat long, but unless he actually got the pit stop wrong, it is possible to overshoot your big box. So that's what I'm thinking. There must have been a mistake somewhere that has cost Greg Giles such a colossal amount of time. He was in the lead before the pit stops all began. He now finds himself, 14 seconds? Okay, that's behind Jack Mace, who's not in the lead. So take 5 off of that. Jamie Peters Ennis now leads Bobby Simmons by 2 seconds. Again, bearing in mind, Jamie Peters Ennis was about 2 seconds behind Bobby Simmons before Bobby came in. So the pit stops, as they always do, completely have reshuffled this entire field.
It has done. Of course, O'Farrell, we're getting told, has changed tyres at the stop, which obviously will slow it down, which means he's going to be on fresh rubber to the end. He's got a third of the race left to use them, but the discrepancy 7 seconds ahead of Greg Giles. What has happened to Greg Giles? I mean, obviously he was caught up in the battle, but surely not 7 seconds worth of battling. Obviously Peters Ennis and Simmons not changing tyres as such. We're told that Peters Ennis definitely didn't. Not sure about Bobby Simmons. Both of them now, though, net leading this race, which means O'Farrell on those fresh tyres really has to make the most of them.
I'm a little surprised by that, because it seems, to me, you would have to do that early to make back the time you're losing in that tyre change. But we will see. I can't see that the tyre changing is going to make such a huge amount of difference here. But again, I'm not a driver. There's a very good reason I go for the commentary box seat. It's safer for all concerned. But two, I don't have the opportunity to gain as much racing knowledge as our competitors here. So we'll see how it transpires. Well, we've just actually seen the elect back podium 3 in that same shot. There they are. So that's Jamie Peters Ennis in the two-tone colour of the car at the bottom of the shot. They're all two-tone colour. What am I on about? The sky blue and pink accented car. That's Jamie Peterson, who will take over the effective lead when Jack Mays comes in. But he's been chased. So we've got the championship leader being chased by the last year's champion and this year's a championship protagonist. So again, 3 strong forces in this year's winter series for the EnduroKA. Now's due to do battle for the lead. And Tom O'Farrell, look at the amount of time he's taken out of the gap to Bobby Simmons. This will be pleasing Jamie Peters-Ennis. If the 2 behind him will scrap, he's got an opportunity to build up a bit of a gap. But as you can see from those lap times, Jamie Peters-Ennis hasn't quite had the pace advantage to build up as much of a lead as he would like. So he needs Bobby Simmons and Tom O'Farrell to fight just to keep that breathing space there.
Yeah, that's true. But this is a fight directly for points in the championship. Of course, for Jamie Peters-Ennis, this could be his turning point, his extension, and a strong foothold to have going into that final round in a week's time. O'Farrell needs these points, and so too does Bobby Simmons. He was the furthest back of those inside the top 3, 7 points back on JPE. Here comes O'Farrell, though, using those fresh tyres to good use through Surtees, then into Clark Curve. Let's see who's going to be brave on the brakes. It's going to go the way of the 97. And I think some clever racing there by Bobby Simmons just to stay behind, because with O'Farrell on fresh tyres, it's not necessarily a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And instead, Simmons can use his slipstream to close up on Peters-Ennis.
That was a lovely move from Tom O'Farrell there. Bobby saw it coming and gave the necessary racing room. I stand corrected. If the tyres are that effective, then it was definitely worth them changing onto. In which case, they pitted at the right time then. I think Greg Giles may have left it a little bit late. I mean, look at this. He's 102.3 post pit stop. He's 7 seconds behind this battle. If these 3 fight that hard, that gap can come down. Is it going to come down quick enough, though, with 18 minutes left on the clock? Well, we'll have to see. Greg Giles I fear he may have strategized himself out of the podium contention. But I await to be proven wrong.
Yeah, but 6.7 is a big gap, and there's only 18 minutes left of this race. I find it so hard to believe, which is such a shame, because not to say I was rooting for him as such, but a little bit of me was cheering him on. Just sort of just because we want to see him do well. I mean, Simmons, O'Farrell, Peters-Ennis, they've all won races, they've all got podiums and such, and so too does Greg Giles, but he's really needed a break this season, and today was obviously a big opportunity for that to happen, and so far his race had gone really, really well. Whatever happened during the pit stop, I'd say probably came in too early was his problem, got caught up in the traffic, and whether or not the strategy he did in the pit lane itself dropped him back a bit, coming out directly in a battle probably didn't assist that, and maybe dropped him out of contention as such, too far to recover. For Giles, still inside the top 5 and will probably be inside the top 4 when, of course, Mace eventually comes into the pit lane. But here's O'Farrell trying to get sub 1 second of Jamie Peters-Ennis. Those fresh tyres definitely working for him. How willing is Peters-Ennis going to be to roll over and let him through?
He won't want to do it, but I don't think he's going to have a choice. As Tom O'Farrell, well, if Tom keeps going that deep into Clark Curve, he may well sail off into the sunset. But goodness, I can't see that Jamie Peters-Ennis is going to have any opportunity to defend against this quite clear pace advantage that Tom O'Farrell is now demonstrating. We'll see, though. It could be a case of he'll burn the best out of those tyres too quickly. It doesn't look like he will, but that's a possibility that that kind of advantageous edge will have dissipated before he has an opportunity to attack Jamie Peters-Ennis. But I can't see it. I can't see that Jamie Peters-Ennis is going to be able to defend against Tom Farrell. And no disrespect to Jamie, of course. He's, like we've already said, he's won twice this season. He's had a very slim lead over Tom coming into this round. You don't achieve things like that by luck. We've seen a number of these drivers, Jamie and Tom included, in several winter series over here at MSVT. So they know their way around these sims. So I can't see that Jamie Peters-Ennis is going to be able to defend. He may opt not to do so. He may try and sit in the slipstream of Tom O'Farrell, but we will see. I rather suspect that Jamie Peters-Ennis will try the defense. Fear it may all come to nothing.
Indeed so. Of course, at the moment, matched for the fastest lap point between Peters-Ennis and Greg Giles, both on a 1:02.114 apiece. Not entirely sure as to how that's going to work out in terms of fastest lap points, whether they'll take one each or if it'll go to Giles, because he said it first as such. Greg Giles slightly closing the gap. Whether it's going to be enough to be in contention in 15 minutes time is a different thing entirely. But of course for O'Farrell, that fastest lap point, points I should say, those fast lap points are going to be vital for him, particularly in this fight with this man right here, because I think that is going to put them effectively matched on championship points. Or actually no, it's going to keep it equal, keep it exactly the same. It's going to be 1 point going into next week. Whereas if O'Farrell is able to get ahead, then that is of course going to be a 3-point advantage going into the final round. So it's vital for him to make this move. Here it could be at the turning point. 14.5 minutes left to go of this race. O'Farrell pulls out to the left-hand side of shot. That's the right-hand side of shot, the left-hand side of the circuit. The outside line for Paddock Hill Bend. Piers Ennis going to go defensive, but how much of a battle can he put up against the fresh tyres of O'Farrell, who completely dances around the outside of Paddock Hill Bend, has got so much more grip, has found himself up in a second place, the net race lead, of course, of this race.
Yeah, somewhat inevitable. I mean, Jamie Peters-Ennis, he tried to park it on the apex, coming through Clark Curve, but he just couldn't disrupt the momentum from Tom O'Farrell. So Tom then takes over the effective race lead with Jack Mace. He's enjoying the fact that he's leading the race. Perfectly okay with that. He's not doing anything wrong, as long as he doesn't forget that the pit window does close in the next 4 minutes. So he will have to come in and relinquish that race lead over to Tom O'Farrell. Now Jamie Peters-Ennis has just got to hope that he can sit in the tyre tracks of the number 97. So what can he do? Of course, we have got traffic ahead of us. May play its part or may be able to get out of the way. We will have to see. But for now, it is Tom O'Farrell, well, strictly speaking, it's Jack Mace from Tom O'Farrell, from Jamie Peters-Ennis, your top three. Bobby Simmons is falling back, isn't he? He's not been able to kind of recapture the pace he showed in the first half of the season. 3 races, 3 podiums for Bobby, and he hasn't seen it since.
No, it's been a tough one for him. And of course was the man that was really, really confident. You know, each week he'd come into the interview room and be like, yeah, see you next week, see you next race, it's fine, you know, I'll be on the podium, it's fine. And obviously a couple of misfortunes, Snetterton has put him on the back foot, but 3 rounds, it's not too bad. 3 rounds of course 4 completed, and could well be once again here today, another race on the podium, maintaining himself inside that championship battle, leaving it all open for when we take to the season finale in a week's time.
And that's another thing that's fascinating about that. We don't know where it's going to be, so the drivers can't practice so much. So that's going to be fascinating. As in comes Jack Mace, then relinquishes the race lead. We knew he had to. That's all the mandatory pit stop you have to do. They don't have to take on fuel or tyres or anything else. It's working well for Tom O'Farrell because he did it when he did. If they were taking tyres now, I would go back to my original statement. They're not going to make full advantage of that tyre advantage they will then be given, because they don't have the racing laps left. Also, look at Greg Giles. He has cut that gap down to 4.2 over Bobby Simmons now that Jack Mace is out of the way. That is the quote correct top 3, or certainly the now race, those without having to serve pit stops now having been dealt with. Tom O'Farrell leading the way from Jamie Peters-Ennis. Can Greg Giles close in enough? He's certainly giving it everything he's got. It's going to be quali laps then for Greg Giles to get onto the podium once again.
Yeah, 3.7 seconds, but presumably with some fresh tyres, and we saw how well that worked for Tom O'Farrell. His last laps being very consistently a few tenths quicker than Peters-Ennis, which per lap, of course, you're getting a lap in effectively every minute as such, which is a few tenths every minute, which should be plenty for Greg Giles to close in on Bobby Simmons. Let's just hope that the drop-off is there for Simmons and is allowing Greg Giles to close the gap. Of course, for his sake, Bobby Simmons is going to want to retain that podium and limit the damage going into that final round in a week's time, which of course we'll all reveal in good time right at the end of this broadcast, so to keep you all on your toes. Peters-Ennis drifting his way through Graham Hill Bend, now 1.3 off the race lead, but doing enough to secure that second place.
Enough for now, but we've said before how costly a mistake is. These guys would never give up. The racing instinct would never let them just throw in the towel and think, oh, well, I'm going to have to settle for that. Unless, oh, Jamie Peters-Ennis, that's a little bit too much curb there, sir. It's not going to be too costly. But again, you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to kill your the valuable momentum that you've got on these cars. Oh, Copeland is going for a bit of a wander somewhere. His name red in the tower. It means he's off the terra firma somewhere. Where is he gone? There's any number of places. Despite the fact this track only has six corners in it, there are still plenty of opportunities to go and explore the countryside, which Greg Copeland now back on track and trying to make up for last time. He's just lost that spot to Will Hartley, as we can see. As we continue to see our top three, Tom O'Farrell is just dancing off into the sunset now.
He is, yeah, really soaring off. And again, this tyre strategy maybe dropping in, because it's not necessarily been a thing that's been quite a huge talking point so far this season. But with how well it's worked today, maybe there are going to be more people talking about how it's going to be in a week's time. Of course, I can say it is going to be a fairly high deg circuit in terms of tyre wear, quite a long one, so they are going to have to be mindful of their tyre wear, and the pit strategy in of itself is going to be a very, very fun one to watch, which should make for a very interesting season finale in a week's time. Into the final 10 minutes of this race, then round number 5 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series, led the way by new championship leader, or well, returning to the championship lead, of course, of O'Farrell as things stand. Peter Zennis doing a great job. Here is Ash Hill trying to get after Nick Creed. Peter Zennis, of course, trying to keep some track position of a back marker. But back to this battle, Nick Creed under pressure from Ash Hill, who wants to match, of course, his season best of P6.
Judging by the last lap time, he's got the pace to do it, but has he got the momentum and consistency to do it is the golden question. Then less than 9 minutes to go. 9 laps if you're counting. Here at Brands Hatch Indy, it has flown by. It has been an absolute superb race. Once again, very, very entertaining from our drivers here in the EnduroKA Winter Series. Very, very enjoyable indeed. Ash Hill just trying to find that small bit of advantage. He's been staring at the back of Nick Creed's tail for quite a while. So he's tried to just get that tiny bit of a momentum advantage. And it hasn't yet paid off for him. He's maintained kind of slipstream distance, so to speak. At the moment, the lemon and lime colour scheme is not giving him the advantage he would like. Over the line once again. From Clark Kirby does seem to be able to get a decent amount of momentum to close back into around about half a second. Let's see what the lap times were. Oh, wow, 0.006 of a second apart between Creed and Hill, and only actually about half a tenth back to Preble as well.
Really not much in it whatsoever. Of course, helped by the fact that it is a shorter circuit. Ash Hill looking quite menacing in the rearview mirror of Nick Creed, maybe just trying to fill it up and sort of bait him into a mistake as such, sort of go for those false moves in order to apply some pressure, both physically and psychologically, into the mind of Nick Creed. But Ash Hill definitely making his intentions known. Not got much chance of catching Jack Mace, of course, for 5th. He's done a worldie of a strategy there to keep that track position. Got a bit of a gap back to Preble for 8th. So these two effectively into the final 7 minutes, free to race. Ash Hill looking immediately to go to the inside of Clark Curve, catches Creed off guard, spots the gap on the inside and finds his way through for 6th. However, Creed going to try and go the long way round. Ash Hill with the advantage as they leave at the final corner onto the pit straight. He's got the advantage by the time they reach turn 1.
Well, he timed that well, didn't he? But it's not done yet. There's 1.5 tenths between them. There's not even a car length in these things. Creed forced to the outside line coming through Paddock Hill Bend. Is he going to have to concede it? He does indeed. Ash Hill knew he had the momentum. He knew he had the car underneath him. But now Creed's got a little bit of momentum advantage back up the hill. They nearly come together into Druid. Now who's going to win out here? Nick Creed has the inside line for the first part, but now down the hill, down towards Graham Hill Bend. That inside advantage goes back to Ash Hill. He doesn't need it. He manages to get the momentum back his way and back into 6th for the Lemon and Lime 107 car.
Nicely done. 6 minutes left on the clock, and Ash Hill moves his way up into 6th for what will be a 3rd time this season. Once again, firmly inside of the top 10. Speaking of top 10s, by the way, Nathan Maximan, of course, after suffering that drive-through penalty early on in the race for jumping the start, could well have been a contention for the race victory, has now moved his way back inside the top 10. Not going to be too troublesome in terms of the championship battle going into the final week, of course, on the 24th of Feb, but minimising the damage to give himself the best shot should things go haywire for our top 3.
You've got to be in the right place to win it if that does happen. So always best to keep on pushing. You never know what maladies will occur as a race continues. There's Ash Hill now trying to build up that gap that Nick Reed had over him a couple of laps ago. That's around about 7/10 as they come down through Graham Hill Bend. Does look like Ash has got a bit of an advantage here. Nick Reed's car looked a little bit uncomfortable coming through Graham Hill Bend then. And again, that's cost Nick a couple of tenths, and you never want to be doing that. That's going to drop him potentially out of slipstream range. Yes, these things are not exactly dependent on aerodynamics, but they are still, to put it lightly, it's a big old hole for these very light powered cars in the air to be punched, so they will take advantage of it. But Ash Hill, he's got the bit between his teeth now. He is pushing on. Less than 5 minutes to go here in Brands Hatch.
Yeah, a handful of laps left to go. Probably looking, I'd say 5 laps left to go. Greg Giles right onto the back of Bobby Simmons. Let's see if we can catch this battle, because it could be a monumental one, a 3rd podium for Greg Giles so far this season, and it is going to spark a bit of a battle. Bobby Simmons, of course, on the inside through 30s and around the outside. Greg Giles putting those fresh tyres to good use as they batter their way in towards Clark Curve. Greg Giles through into 3rd place, demoting Bobby Simmons off of that podium. 4 laps left to go here in Brands Hatch Indy, but Bobby Simmons, how hard is he going to fight it by the time they reach Paddock Hill?
Well, he's not going to let that go willingly, is he? A champion he is, for good reason. But yeah, Bobby Simmons following the Tom O'Farrell school of overtaking there. That was a lovely executed move. Again, utilising those fresh tyres. I think Bobby Simmons' chance to try and disrupt the momentum of Greg Giles has gone. And again, if those new tyres prove as good for Greg as it did for Tom, then I suspect that is job done. Bobby will give it everything he's got, but there's just nothing left. There's no rubber left on the tyres. They're pretty much down to the canvas by now, more than likely, or certainly comparatively speaking, for our champion. Still, a 4th place is a good finish, but it's not where he would have wanted to be.
No, not when his main championship rivals are 1 and 2, and once again extending the gap. Of course, the fastest lap as well going the way of Greg Giles, so he's going to be effectively scoring the points that you would get for 2nd place, which is fantastic stuff for Greg Giles. Of course, at the moment it's at 7th in the championship, and I believe only 6 points off the fight with Ash Hill for 6th place, so a huge chunk of points in assisting that, and I think actually will be enough to see him ahead into the final few laps of this race. Greg Giles, it's been such a good race for him. I mean, a decent qualifying, I think, of course 5th place in the end for him. He worked his way forward. Race winning pace, of course, in that first stint, unfortunately didn't go his way, of course, over the course of the second half of this race, but he's been able to work his way back up with some sensational pace, really matching that of Tom O'Farrell, and get himself back into the podium places.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And again, another point you alluded to earlier, Zach, what might have been for Nathan Maximin. He's gone to the outside line of Druids as Evans has defended that inside line. Nathan certainly had the pace advantage. He's had near as damn it race leader's pace. Oh, wow, that's getting a bit desperate on the inside line of Graham Hill Bend. Oh, that could have gone horribly, horribly wrong. But we only have a couple of laps left. That is when you tend to see the do-or-die moves coming out side by side again. Surtees, now Clearways, now into Clark. Now he's going to have to kind of try and do the up and under here. And Evans has parked it on the apex, or has he? Or has Maximin managed to get the momentum he needs and will have the inside line all the way along the Brabham Straight? Such as, well, we all know it's not very straight. Side by side between the two. Surely that is going to be advantage Maximin. 2 laps remaining. Near as damn it. It rather depends on where Tom is, actually. And there we go. Yep, Evans realising he can't turn into the apex with the car there. He's had to concede the position. That's 9th to Nathan Maximin.
Yeah, even more places, but Evans immediately on the counter-attack, very late on the brakes. Maximan, though, sees it coming and doesn't really get too disorientated by it, able to take a normal racing line and stay ahead. That, of course, is going to be his cap for this race, unless Preble or anyone in front makes a mistake. On to what could well be the final lap, of course, dependent on where O'Farrell is. But, it could be quite close, actually.
I think this will be last lap just. I just kind of looking at when the lap time came up on the board to how many seconds were left. I think Tom will just be defeated by the flag, but I don't think he's going to worry about it with a 6-second lead to the good. So it looks like our podium 3 are decided, but still plenty of position behind them hotly contested, but you cannot take it away from Tom. He played that strategy brilliantly, kept a cool head. He knew he had a mountain to climb, and climb it he did.
He did indeed, of course, from pole position. Was under, of course, heavy fire all race long from Greg Giles. He got an initial gap. The clock is ticking down. Is this going to be the final lap? I believe so. Either way, Tom O'Farrell, for the third time this season, round number 5, of course, here in Brands Hatch Indy, he takes the championship lead into the final week of this championship, and once again victorious in the EnduroKA's. Jamie Peters-Ennis across the line in second place. Greg Giles with a sensational podium there in third place. Bobby Simmons, Jack Mace rounding up the top 5 as well. What a battle that was all throughout this race. Tom O'Farrell handling it with such maturity. Nathan Maximan, though, a driver of what could have been of this 5th and penultimate round of the championship. 9th place, but arguably one of his best performances thus far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So what that he's actually setting up for next week is a winner takes all duel between Tom O'Farrell or Jamie Peters-Ennis. Oh, you could not have planned that at the beginning of the season. There's always what we want to see. It's going to go down to the last corner of the last lap of the final race of the season.
Well, let's hope so. I'm sure it will be, but with how things are going to stand on the championship standings, it is going to be that much closer. Of course, O'Farrell and Peters-Ennis not getting either of them any bonus points, so it is purely as things stand in terms of the raw point system. 1 point separate them coming into this round, and of course there are 2 points in between each position. O'Farrell gains 2 points, which flips it on its head. O'Farrell leads Peters-Ennis by just 1 singular point going into the final round, which we can now announce. Of course, you guys at home voted for it. The drivers themselves put it into a public vote. They had Castlecombe, Croft, Okayama and Zandvoort. And of course, for the first time this season, we're going to be taking a trip outside of the UK. We're going to be heading to Japan. Okayama GP sets the scene for our finale, round number 6 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series, which should be an absolute blast, Chris. Of course, we'll see, of course, how they get on. But what a circuit. Quite a long one for these EnduroKAs, but should be quite a staple point in terms of the racing.
Oh, what a choice. It's a difficult circuit. Don't get me wrong. It is a very challenging circuit, and it's going to be one that our drivers are going to be much less familiar with. All of our drivers here know all the British circuits through sim racing and also through driving, chucking their own cars around it. Okinawa doesn't have that luxury. So they are all going to be driving much more on their wits and much more reactionary. You'll see a very different type of driver coming out from all of the drivers concerned. I absolutely guarantee it. But what a way to finish the season!
Yes, should be a lot of fun, of course. Thank you for joining me alongside in the commentary booth, Chris. It's been a pleasure, of course, to have you for Anglesey. And of course, today we are going to take a quick chat with our top 3. Of course, O'Farrell, Peters-Ennis and Greg Giles. What a venue that we've got in store, and what venues we've had all season long as well. Of course, we'll take a chat with race winner and new championship leader of Tom O'Farrell. Tom, of course, welcome back to the commentary booth. 3rd win this season and the championship lead going into the final round. How are you feeling?
Well, we'll take that. Big thank you to Jamie, because he kind of gave me that back after Snetterton race 1 where I held everyone off. So yeah, that's I'm really happy with that. And I think that's what 3rd race win of the season. So yep. Yeah, even better.
Even better. I mean, you took the first 2 wins of this season. You're going to be looking to take the last 2 as well?
Oh,
how are you feeling about Okayama?
I've done it once in a rear-wheel drive car. And that was in another Toby Owen series, actually. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't really remember it, but yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Basically, it's as I say, not really driven it, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a fun circuit, of course. Quite a long one for these KAs. Today, there was quite a big mystery surrounding sort of the tyre wear, the tyre deg and things. Talk to us a little bit more about that and how obviously you think that's going to apply to Okayama in a week's time, because it is long, quite a lot of high demanding corners in terms of the tyres. So do you think we're going to see a similar split in terms of the strategy there as well?
I would expect people to change tyres more than they did this race, because from the looks of it, I would have said that Jamie, possibly Bobby, maybe even Jack Mace didn't change tyres. I changed tyres, and I strongly suspect Greg did as well, given his pace. So I would have thought going to the next round, change tyres is a must. I would have thought, just given the hairpins and everything, which is where you're going to be wearing your tyres out a bit more. So.
Absolutely. Well, of course, this race was quite interesting when it came to obviously the strategy. Not necessarily expecting Brands Indy to be so degrading on the tyres, but obviously appeared to be, because Simmons and Peters Ennis really dropped off towards the end.
Yeah, I did a race run literally this morning to try and test it out, and the lap times were about the same, but I was getting close to track limits, which is also going to be another thing that we're going to need to have a look at, because I think there's going to be a few people getting penalties for track limits, unfortunately. But that's just because of not changing your tyres, just the understeer slightly more. So it's
tough one indeed. Well, thank you for joining us once again in the commentary booth. Thank you for the very lovely insight, and congratulations on your third win of the season. 60% so far of the races that have been completed. That's not a bad one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I've got to say a big thank you to obviously Mum, Dad, Emma, Daisy, who's been watching at home, and I think Scott and my other teammates that unfortunately couldn't be joining us. And obviously some of my teammates have been doing the JSCC scholarship today, so big well done for them. And they may not have won it, but it's fantastic just to be going and doing that. So well done to them. Thank you guys for the commentary.
Awesome stuff, mate. Well, take care, and I'm sure we'll see you back in a week's time, maybe as champion.
Thank you. Here's hoping. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, I can't get involved, but yeah, best of luck to you, mate. See you in a week's time.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Tomo Farrell, victor once again this season for the third time. We'll take a chat with Jamie Peters Ennis, who did enough today. I think second place, managing the tyres all the way to the end. Didn't change tyres, or at least we presume. Quite a tough race for you, but in the end, limiting the damage, and only 1 point between you and O'Farrell going into the final round.
Yeah, I decided that I wasn't going to change tyres as I got to my pit box. I quickly changed it because I was in my head. I was going to change, and then I thought tyres were right, and I didn't. I elected not to. That was that win for Tom. He did me a huge favour at Snet, so I let him go. So yeah, that I want to say thank you for Snetterton, and that was me returning the favour back. And also get well soon to the Abbotts, and huge congratulations to Jack for being back where he should be at the front.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really strong race for him. But strategy, a big talking point. Obviously, in a week's time, the championship decider will come down to Okayama. The first trip outside of the UK. How are you feeling about it? Are you confident you can take the crown?
No. I was hoping it was going to be Castle Combe, because I know that place very well. As Chris and I both know, it's on our doorstep. So, and it's a circuit I have driven around in real life and on the sim. Okayama, haven't even got a clue where it goes. So I think there's going to be a lot of testing next week.
Don't worry, O'Farrell is so he says, has only done a couple of laps. Yeah. So maybe it's going to be a bit of unfamiliar ground for the pair of you, and could be quite the decider.
Yeah, and I mean, Tom and I know we're sort of going against each other. We chat a lot in the week, and we do help each other out. And he's the perfect person to race against. And yeah, whoever gets the win at the end, will both be happy.
I'm sure, and I'm sure the other person definitely won't be living it down anytime soon. But all the more reason to come back next year, right?
Yeah, unfortunately I won't be able to get the ARTA test because I already have a race license. So I'll be thinking up and down the grid who I'm going to pass that down to. Yeah, I've got an idea, but I'm going to keep that one under my hat.
Awesome stuff. Well, maybe you'll let us know next week. Who knows? If you do know. But Jamie, very big congratulations for you. Of course, best of luck for Okayama in a week's time. You better get practicing, mate.
Thank you. I'll be on it now.
Awesome stuff. Well, Jamie Peters Ennis once again onto the podium, and only 1 point separating him from the championship lead going into the final round. Of course, we'll say goodbye to him, and then we'll say hello to Greg Giles into the commentary booth, who will take a big word with for the first time this season. He's on to the podium. Greg, what a race!
Oh, I need a cup of tea after that one.
You deserve it, mate. You deserve it. I mean, just talk us through it, really, because quite a roller coaster. I mean, you were leading pretty much the vast majority of the first half of the race. What happened really at the pit stop? Was it just poor timing that shot you out into traffic?
I ran out of fuel.
Oh,
Ran out
no.
of fuel on entry. I was too busy watching the back of Tom's bumper. I forgot that I didn't have enough fuel to do an extra lap. So I had to coast down the pit at 20 while trying to decide whether I wanted tyres or not while stopping early. And I don't know if I actually got the tyres or not. I was so flustered. But the fact that I was well over halfway by the end of the race, I think I did actually manage to just save the first set. So that would have done a bit of damage limitation. The fact my stop would have been a bit shorter.
So what could have been maybe? Was there more to give?
Not more to give, but I definitely think it was a case this time of my race to lose. I am on pace with the qualifying times. I just was very late to qualifying and just didn't get the lap to hook up. As you can see, sort of the race pace was reasonable. I think if I'd managed to sort of hold on to Tom's toe a bit longer, the fact that I managed to save the tyres quite well, I would have just about sort of eked it out at the end.
Would have been close. Absolutely would have been close. But that charge towards the end, obviously getting the podium by, what, about only a couple of laps or so versus Bobby Simmons, obviously taking that great damage limitation and something to sweeten the blow, of course, of what sort of a could have been race. Yeah,
definitely. At that point, I decided there was nothing to lose. I might as well go ahead. I'm a bit off the top guys in the championship. You can get around that bit quicker if you just induce that bit of slip. But when it goes wrong, especially on old tyres. So there was always a chance of... I did actually run a bit wide, so caution regarding penalties on that one. But yeah, I had no more left.
Giving everything you can and maybe a little bit more. We spoke to the top two when it came to, obviously, a week's time when we head to Japan. How are you feeling about it? Are we going to see consecutive podiums?
All down south, I feel in the KA. So luckily, I've got quite a bit of experience through iRacing. Nokiyama, I can never pronounce it. I'm fairly quick there, but in rear-wheel drive GT cars and stuff like that. So if I can adapt the driving and keep the momentum up, there's a couple of bigger braking zones which we haven't had that much of this season, so it'll be interesting. I think there'll definitely be some more moves.
I've always enjoyed Okayama, of course, as you say, sort of on iRacing, particularly with the F4 car. It's always a fun track to go to. Flows really nicely. It'd be interesting to see, obviously, in the KAs, because it's a full-length Grand Prix circuit in not full-fledged Grand Prix cars. So we'll definitely be interesting to see what speed they get to on that back straight towards the first hairpin, but should be a lot of fun. Best of luck to you.
Yep, thank you very much.
Take care, mate. Goodbye. And of course, I'm sure we'll see you back in a week's time, hopefully, with another podium. Greg Giles, of course, P3 in the end of things, and what a battle it was for him to get there in the end. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that is going to bring an end to round number 5 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series. My name has been Zach Sweeney. I've had Chris Buxton alongside me in the commentary booth, Mike Yao on production behind the scenes, making sure we followed each and every single bit of the action that transpired over the 60 minutes of racing action that we had. Tom O'Farrell, Jamie Peters-Ennis, the top 2 in that race, and the top 2 in the championship, separated by just one measly point going into the community voted round of Okayama, the first time out of the UK, round number 6 of this brilliant championship. We'll be back same time in a week's time. Don't miss it, but in the meantime, take care and a very warm goodbye.
Grid Finder is the home of sim racing leagues. Our management tools allow you to recruit drivers and monitor their ratings and live splits. Find this and more at gridfinder.com. Sign up for free today.